So the next thing I'm going to work on is attaching the sides to the shelves and the bottom piece. So to do that, I went ahead and laid this on its side, and it doesn't matter which way is facing what because I built these perfectly symmetrical. The first thing I'm going to do is put a little glue here. There we are. I'm going to grab our board, set it down into position. I'm going to make sure that it's lined up flush in the front. Then we want to make sure that the shelf goes this piece here nice and flush. And once we've got everything squared up and flush, we're going to go ahead and run our screws in. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Again, a little bit more tricky. I'm going to run a little bead of glue here. But this time, I'm going to have to tip this up. I made it with this. Try to hold everything flush and screw it together. If you guys know of a better way to do this, by all means put it in the comments. I am fairly new at woodworking. Definitely not a professional, so if you know, again, a better way to make this happen, I'm all ears. So I'm not going to completely tighten that down because I want to make sure that everything is lined up before I do that. You may have seen that when I went to go tighten this up, it kind of pulled it that way. I've kind of noticed that with these pocket screws, that they kind of pull. If the hole is on this side, they kind of pull that direction as you tighten them up. So be aware of that when you're doing this. So there we go. So, and you're going to do this with all three of your shelves. So I think from here, working on the side, the front is facing that way. I think this is the best way to approach this. So I'm going to stick a shelf in position. I think this time I'll go ahead and move to the top and get a screw secured in here before doing anything else down at the bottom. And again, making sure I line up everything flush. So this is what we have up to this point. So I want to point out a couple little problems I'm having. This, on this side, looks pretty good. You can see we got some pretty tight joints here. It's not looking too bad, except that one there. And so what we're getting is we're having gaps here from where this piece didn't quite line up with this piece. But on this side, it actually looks quite a bit worse. As you can see, that doesn't look great. I've got a really big gap there. I'm actually embarrassed to show that. But I think the way I'm going to handle this, and you can see what the issue is there again, that I did not get that board quite lined up somehow when I assemble my side pieces. So make sure you guys are being really diligent to try to make sure that you get everything nice and flush when you're assembling those side pieces. I don't even know how that happened, honestly. I was trying to be pretty attentive to that, but somehow it happened anyways. So I think what I'm going to do is just cut slivers of wood and use some wood glue and just kind of put it in there, and then I'll come back and sand and blend this. You probably won't even be able to see it afterwards. But I wanted to put some kind of separators right here in the middle, so I'm going to go ahead and cut those now. I'm going to measure from the back, because the front has those little lips on it. So I'm going to measure from the back. So I'm going to measure the distance from here to here and get a piece of plywood that fits right in there perfectly. Because you can see this kind of flexes a little bit. Well, maybe you can't see, I'm not sure. But this does flex a little bit when you push on it. I want this to be nice and strong. So I'm going to put a couple little separators there right here in the middle, and that'll kind of help with that, except on the bottom side. But I think when I stick the backer board on there and run a couple brad nails, that'll help with that as well. But anyways, this is looking pretty good overall, I think, aside from those gaps in the front, which I'll have to address later. Okay, so I've cut my two divider pieces in the middle here, and I've also cut the two trim pieces to go on the front. Now, despite my best efforts to do proper measuring and everything on this side, somehow the distance between here and here and here and here was off just a little bit. So I did have to cut custom pieces for each one of those and custom pieces for the trim piece. So basically what I did with that to cut these is I measured the gap from the top. Here, I'll just go around back and show you. Basically what I measured was the distance, the inside distance from here to here, and that gave me the dimensions for one board, and the same thing here, I measured the inside dimensions there. It gave me the dimensions for the other board. For the front pieces, once I stuck the dividers in there, I measured the distance from here to here and cut those. So I got those all to fit in there nice and tight. Now from here, I've got to secure the boards. So I measured the distance across, and it was about 60. Wasn't quite 60, close to 60, 59 and something, 7/8 maybe. But so what I did was I just measured 30 from here to here and made some center marks, and I did the same thing from the same side. It has to be the same side because this is not exactly 60 inches wide. So I measured 30 inches from there to there and marked as well. Now I'm going to secure these boards in place using a brad nailer. Okay, so I went ahead and drew myself a reference line with a straight edge from front to back. That way I knew where to pop some nails. So I'm just going to pop a few nails in here to hold it in place. Gone ahead and flipped this thing on its face, and I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom board. Go ahead and secure that. Now I'm going to go ahead and secure the front boards. Alright, so I was having an issue where the top of the board was flush, but down here wasn't. This board wasn't cut square, I guess. So this was wanting to sit down in there a little bit. So what I did was I just took a piece of scrap I had laying around. I just kind of shimmied that behind there to give it something to hold on to while I nail it into position. So let's go ahead and stick that in there. Nail that in place. And break off that part there. So that's the top one. Let's get the bottom one in position. And thankfully, I don't think we're gonna have that problem with the bottom one. So let's get that tacked in position. All right. Okay, so admittedly, this is probably not the best way to deal with this. However, the way I dealt with that top divider there is the same way I'm going to deal with this one. And what I did was I kind of pushed it to the side like this so I could run a bead of glue. And then after running that bead of glue, kind of swung it back in position so that the glue would get between the two boards. And I kind of gave it a little bit of a wiggle so it kind of smear around. And then I came back and wiped off the excess. Now, is that the best way to handle this? No, of course not. But is it going to work in this circumstance? I'm pretty sure it is. Now, what you could do is put a big clamp between here to kind of mush everything together. You see how I kind of squeezed out a little bit? That's kind of what you want. So I think what I'm going to do is flip this thing over and put some weight on it and let it cure for a while before I touch it again. So here we are, we've got the same business going on here, and I'm going to address it the same way by just kind of shimming it up. I'm thinking by the time I paint it, put a little wood filler in that, you're probably not even going to see it. Is it ideal? No. Does it look fantastic? No. Am I a master crafts woods worker guy, whatever you want to call him, carpenter? Absolutely not. Not by any stretch of the imagination. But this is my first time making anything like this. I think it's going fairly well. This is going to be a pretty cool looking piece when I'm done, I think. If you don't think so, that's okay too. There we go. Let's pop a little wood glue in there. I'll try to get that sitting as flush as I can on all edges. Now this thing's on wheels and wants to roll around on me. Okay. There we go. See, that actually fills in that gap pretty good, I'd say. So what I'm trying to address right now is that gap right there. Kind of fill that in. Trying to find the right width piece of wood that's going to work the best there. There we go. Again, I'll put a little wood filler there, do a little sanding there just to kind of fix that better a little later on. Okay, so once you have all your little edges worked out, looking good, as you can see I have here, it's just about done actually. So the last step is to put on the top, the backer board, and the little trim that goes underneath the top here, we just kind of run from one side to the other right there. Just kind of like these pieces do. But I'm going to do all this with glue and brad nails. So typically I wouldn't want to put the top on with brad nails, but since this thing's on wheels and you really shouldn't have to lift it too much, I'm just going to use kind of an excess of brad nails, and I think it should be fine. I'll just run multiples across there. Ooh, that bruise from paintball is starting to show up pretty good. Went paintballing earlier. Got a few welts, got nailed a couple times. But this is going to be a pretty simple procedure. You just want to center it. And then what I'm going to do is lift it up, run a bead of glue along the sides, and brad nail it in place. See, look, proof that I do use a tape measure. Oh my God. And I'm gonna have to reuse that tape measure because this thing slid on me. So, want to make sure it's centered before you tack everything in place, or use the brad nails everything in place. All right. So again, I'll just make sure it's centered and make sure it's flush with the back. Yep, looking good. Pretty good. This is going to be the tricky side, because this one's got a good little bow in it. I don't know if you see it in the video. You can see I got to push it down to get it to stay flat. So holding that down is going to be fun. There we go. All right. So that's that for the top. Now we're going to put that trim piece along this bottom edge. So for this part, essentially what you want to do is take this, run a bit of glue across there. Pretty straightforward. And then you're going to tack or brad nail that up to the bottom surface of your tabletop, or the top of your entertainment center, whatever you want to, whatever terminology you want to use for this thing. Now I would recommend a couple of woodworking clamps to hold it in position as you brad nail it. Again, I don't have any of those, so I think what I'm going to do is grab those big C clamps again to hold it. So you've got a bead of glue on your board, got some clamps ready. You're going to clamp this thing into place and use some brad nails to hold it in position. So I'm going to start at the center here, just to kind of hold it up. I'll go over to this side and get this lined up on the side. I'm just making that a bit snug. I don't want to over tighten it and end up marring up the surface. Even though I do want the rust to look here, I don't want to see, clamp marks all over it. Which again would be why I recommend woodworking clamps. I'm definitely going to need to pick up a set of those if I'm going to be doing more woodworking in the future. Much more convenient, easier to use, and won't mar up your surfaces. You have the rubber pads on them. Just trying to get this thing lined up. And my C-clamp moved. That's awesome. Probably if this thing weren't so rusty, that would help too. working clamps. Get them. Highly recommended. All right, let's get some brad nails in this thing. Right, should be good. Let's get the clamps off. Okay. So, as what happened before, we've got this little gap here, so I'll address that, take care of that, and then we'll put the back on this thing. Okay, so I'm getting to the final step where I just want to stick the back on here, my backer board, but I was having an issue where this was sagging. The top board was sagging in the middle. So what I did was I took a whole bunch of wood that I had laying around on a couple of shims, put a straight edge up here on the top, and made sure I got that nice and straight. Because you're not going to get that backer board to sit on there properly if that's sagging in the center like that. So now what you want to do is center it left to right, top to bottom, and you're just going to nail that in place with some brad nails. At this point, it might be nice to have a helper. I don't have a helper, but I'll do what I can. Okay. So now if I can grab my nail gun while I've been moving, pop a couple nails in there, we'll be golden. Got it. So from here, just kind of make your way around, putting those nails in place. All right, perfect.